The rain hammered against the window of the small two-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn as Amara Johnson sat at her laptop, her swollen belly pressing against the desk. 7 months pregnant with twins, and she was still taking freelance coding contracts at midnight because the bills didn't care about her exhaustion. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, debugging a security system for a client who'd never know her name, never see her face, never understand that the brilliant code they were paying bargain rates for came from a woman the tech world had tried to destroy 6 years ago. In the next room, she could hear the soft clicking of another keyboard. Isaiah. Her 5-year-old son, who should have been asleep hours ago, was undoubtedly on his tablet again, doing whatever it was he did in those digital spaces she couldn't fully comprehend. She'd learned to stop asking too many questions. When your kindergartner casually mentions has he optimized the school's lunch ordering system or fixed a bug in the subway's payment processing, you either accept that your child is different or you drive yourself crazy trying to understand how. Amara saved her work and closed the laptop, pressing her hands against her lower back as she stood. The twins were active tonight, tumbling over each other like they were already fighting for space in a world that would probably judge them before they even took their first breath. She walked to Isaiah's room and gently pushed open the door. Her son sat cross-legged on his bed, his tablet propped on a pillow, his brown eyes reflecting the blue light of the screen. He was small for his age, with tight curls that Amara kept trimmed short because he hated the sensation of hair touching his ears. He wore his noise-cancelling headphones, the expensive ones she'd saved for months to buy, and didn't notice her enter. Zay, as she said softly, using the nickname he preferred. When he didn't respond, she tapped his shoulder gently, giving him a moment to transition. He looked up, pulled one side of the headphones back, and blinked at her. "It's late, baby. You need to sleep." "I'm working on something important," he said in that matter-of-fact tone he used when he was deep in concentration. "I found him, Mama." Amara's chest tightened. "Found who?" "My father." Isaiah turned the tablet toward her, and she saw a face she'd spent 6 years trying to forget. Damien Sterling. Billionaire. Tech mogul. CEO of Sterling Technologies. The man whose grandfather had arranged a marriage contract between them 6 years ago, a legal document that made her his wife on paper but meant nothing in reality. They'd never met. Never spoken. The arrangement had been the dying wish of Marcus Sterling, Damien's grandfather, who'd seen something in Amara when she'd briefly worked at Sterling Tech, before everything fell apart. "Zay, we've talked about this. You can't just..." 99.97% DNA match, Isaiah continued, his voice taking on that clinical quality it did when he was reciting data. "I cross-referenced the DNA sample from my last pediatric appointment with the National Bone Marrow Registry database. He donated blood 3 years ago during a company wellness drive. The markers are conclusive. Damien Sterling is my biological father, which means is also the father of the twins you're carrying." Amara sank onto the edge of Isaiah's bed, her mind reeling. She'd suspected, of course. There had only been one night, one terrible night 6 years ago that she couldn't fully remember, a night that had resulted in Isaiah's conception. She'd been drugged, she was sure of that much, and she'd woken up alone in a hotel room with gaps in her memory and a devastating sense of violation. But she'd never been able to prove it, never been able to find out who had done it to her or why. "Honey, you can't just hack into medical databases. That's illegal. That's..." "I encrypted my pathway and bounced the signal through 14 different countries," Isaiah said, as if this made it perfectly acceptable. "No one can trace it. And Mama, there's more. The twins have a genetic blood disorder. Beta thalassemia major. The prenatal screening missed it, but I accessed your latest lab results from Dr. Chen's office. The twins are going to need bone marrow transplants within days of being born, or they'll die. And Damien Sterling is a perfect match. is the only perfect match in the entire registry database for their specific genetic markers. The room seemed to tilt. Amara gripped the edge of the bed, feeling the twins move inside her as if they could sense her panic. How do you know all this? How can you possibly? I've been monitoring your medical files, Isaiah said simply. I set up an alert system after your last appointment when the doctor seemed concerned. I wanted to make sure you and the babies were okay. And when I saw the markers, I knew I had to find out if there was a compatible donor. That's when I found him. That's when I found my father. Amara wanted to tell him he was wrong, that he couldn't possibly understand the complexity of what he was suggesting, but the truth was that Isaiah understood things she didn't. He'd taught himself to read at 18 months. By 3, he was coding in Python. By 4, he'd built his first neural network. The doctors called it autism spectrum disorder with savant syndrome, a clinical diagnosis that felt inadequate for describing the way her son could see patterns in chaos, could navigate digital systems like they were extensions of his own mind. Even if you're right, Amara said slowly, even if Damien Sterling is your father, and the twins' father, he doesn't know we exist. He doesn't know about that night. And I can't just walk up to a billionaire and demand he take a paternity test. You don't have to, Isaiah said. You're already married to him. You have legal standing. And Mamar, the twins don't have time for you to figure out the social protocols. They have approximately 7 weeks before they're born, and they'll need the transplant within 48 hours of birth for optimal survival rates. We need to make contact with Damien Sterling now. Before Amara could respond, her phone buzzed on Isaiah's nightstand. She picked it up and saw 3 missed calls from her half-sister Keisha, followed by a series of text messages that made her blood run cold. You need to see what's trending, the last message read. You're finished. Amara opened Twitter with shaking hands and saw her own face staring back at her from dozens of posts, each one more vicious than the last. The hashtag #SterlingGoldDigger was trending in the New York area. Someone, she didn't have to guess who, had leaked the story of her marriage to Damien Sterling, along with carefully edited evidence that painted her as a scheming woman who trapped a billionaire into marriage and was now pregnant with another man's children. There were photos of her at her prenatal appointments, taken from angles that made her look suspicious, furtive. There were screenshots of financial records, fake ones, she was certain, showing large deposits into her account. There were testimonials from anonymous sources claiming she'd been sleeping around, that everyone knew the babies couldn't be Damien Sterling's because he'd never even met his contract wife. Diane, Amara whispered, recognizing her stepmother's handiwork. Diane Harrison had married Amara's father when Amara was 12, and she'd spent the next decade making it clear that Amara, dark-skinned, natural-haired, too smart for her own good Amara, didn't fit into the carefully curated image of the Harrison family. When Amara's father died 5 years ago, Diane had inherited everything, and she'd made it her mission to ensure that Amara got nothing, not even the college fund her father had set up for her. And now, somehow, Diane had found out about the marriage contract, about the twins, and she was using it to destroy whatever remained of Amara's reputation. But why? What did Diane gain from this? The answer came 30 seconds later when her phone rang. Unknown number. Amara almost didn't answer, but something made her press the green button. Ms. Johnson, a woman's voice said, smooth and cold as polished steel. Or should I say Mrs. Sterling? We need to talk. I'm downstairs. I suggest you let me up, unless you prefer to have this conversation with the dozen paparazzi I can have here in the next 10 minutes. Amara looked at Isaiah, who was already typing on his tablet, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. There's a woman in a black Mercedes outside, he said. Victoria Sterling. Damien's cousin. Former Chief Operating Officer of Sterling Technologies until she was forced out in a board restructuring 2 years ago. She's been trying to regain control of the company ever since. And Mamar, She's connected to Diane. I'm seeing financial transfers between their accounts going back 18 months. Let her up, Iamara said, her voice steadier than she felt. If she wants a conversation, we'll have one. 5 minutes later, Victoria Sterling stood in Amara's small living room, looking like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Mid-30s, blonde hair swept into a perfect chignon, wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Amara's monthly rent. She carried a slim leather briefcase and wore an expression of barely concealed contempt as she surveyed the modest apartment. "So this is where my cousin's wife has been hiding," Victoria said, settling onto the couch without being invited. "How quaint. How very humble. What do you want?" Amara remained standing, positioning herself between Victoria and the hallway where Isaiah's room was located. "I want you to sign these." Victoria opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. Divorce papers. A full release of any claim to the Sterling family assets. An NDA that prevents you from ever speaking about your connection to the Sterling family. And a custody agreement that places any children you may have in the care of qualified guardians, people who can provide for them properly, given that you're clearly incapable of doing so yourself. "You want me to give up my children?" "I want you to do what's best for them," Victoria said. "Look at yourself. Look at this place. You're living in poverty, pregnant with twins you can't afford to raise, trying to pass them off as belonging to one of the wealthiest men in New York. It's pathetic. And when the paternity test proves those babies aren't Damien's, and it will, you'll be facing fraud charges on top of everything else." "The paternity test will prove they are his children," Iamara said quietly. "Just like Isaiah is his son." Victoria's perfectly composed face cracked, just for a moment, with something that looked like genuine surprise. Then she laughed, a sharp sound with no humor in it. "You actually believe that, don't you? You've convinced yourself that one night 6 years ago means something. But let me explain reality to you, Ms. Johnson. That night was arranged. You were brought to that hotel room specifically to compromise Damien, to create exactly this situation. And when it didn't work the first time, when you were fired and disappeared, we thought we were done with you. We had no idea you'd kept the pregnancy, kept the child, and certainly no idea that Marcus Sterling had executed some insane marriage contract before he died." "We?" Amara's mind raced. "Who's we?" "Does it matter?" Victoria stood, smoothing her skirt. "The point is, you were a pawn in a game you didn't even know you were playing. And now you're trying to collect on a prize that was never meant for you. So sign the papers, take the settlement money. It's generous, I assure you, far more than someone like you deserves, and disappear. Or I will destroy you so completely that you'll wish you had. Get out of my home." Victoria smiled. "I'll give you 48 hours to reconsider. After that, I'm going to the press with evidence that will bury you. Evidence of your drug use, your unstable mental health, your history of making false accusations. I have doctors willing to testify, employers willing to confirm your erratic behavior, social workers who will declare you unfit. I will take everything from you, including those children. So think carefully about what you do next." She walked to the door, then paused, looking back. "Oh, and Ms. Johnson? If you think you can run to Damien with this story, save your breath. He has no idea who you are, and he never will. I've made certain of that." The door closed behind her, and Amara stood frozen in the middle of her living room, her heart pounding so hard she thought the twins could probably feel it. Then Isaiah appeared in the hallway, still holding his tablet, his face set in that expression of intense concentration that meant his brilliant mind was working through a problem. "She's lying about some things and telling the truth about others," he said. "I've been recording the conversation and running her statements through a linguistic analysis algorithm. The part about that night being arranged, that's true. The part about having evidence against you, that's fabricated. She has connections to people who could create false evidence, but she doesn't have it yet. She's bluffing, trying to scare you into signing. Zay, this is too dangerous. These are powerful people, and they drugged you, Mumar. Isaiah's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that made him sound older than 5. They drugged you and sent you to that hotel room, and then they tried to make you disappear when it didn't accomplish whatever they wanted it to accomplish. And now they are threatening to take me and the twins away from you. That's not okay. That's not acceptable. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm going to help you. I'm going to find out exactly what happened that night, who arranged it, and why. I'm going to prove that Damien Sterling is my father and the twins' father. I'm going to expose everyone who tried to hurt you. And I'm going to make sure the twins get the bone marrow transplant they need to survive. He looked up at her with those eerily intelligent eyes. I'm going to fix this, Mumar. That's what I do. I see problems, and I fix them. Amara wanted to tell him no, wanted to protect him from the ugly realities of adult corruption and cruelty, wanted to keep him in a world where 5-year-olds played with blocks instead of hacking corporate databases. But the truth was, Isaiah wasn't like other 5-year-olds. He never had been. And right now, his unique abilities might be the only thing that could save their family. Okay, she said finally. But we do this carefully. We do this smart. And if at any point it becomes too dangerous, we stop. Agreed? Agreed. Isaiah returned to his room, and within seconds, she could hear the rapid clicking of his keyboard. Her son was going to war with some of the most powerful people in New York City, and he was doing it from a bedroom filled with dinosaur posters and glow-in-the-dark stars. Amara returned to her own laptop and opened the Sterling Technologies website. Damien Sterling's face stared back at her from the leadership page, strong jaw, dark hair starting to show silver at the temples, eyes that looked tired even in the professional photo. According to his bio, he'd taken over Sterling Technologies after his grandfather's death 6 years ago and had tripled the company's value. He was known for being ruthless in business, brilliant in strategy, and completely private in his personal life. He was also, apparently, her husband. And the father of her children. And he had no idea she existed. She needed a plan. She couldn't just walk into Sterling Technologies and announce who she was. Victoria had made it clear that approach would be shut down immediately. But she also couldn't wait. The twins were due in 7 weeks, and according to Isaiah's research, they'd need the transplant within 48 hours of birth. An idea began to form. Sterling Technologies was always hiring contractors, especially coders. If she could get into the building, get close enough to Damien to have a conversation, to explain. Mumar. Isaiah appeared in her doorway again. I submitted a job application for you at Sterling Technologies. Contract position, cybersecurity team, remote work with occasional on-site requirements. I used your real qualifications but under a maiden name variant, Amara Collins instead of Johnson. They need someone immediately because they just fired their entire security team after a breach last week. You should hear back within 24 hours. You can't just. It's done. And Mumar, I found something else. The hotel from that night 6 years ago, the Grandview Plaza, I hacked their archived security system. They delete footage after 7 years for storage reasons, so we're running out of time, but I found it. I found video from that night. And Mumar, you need to see this. Amara moved to sit beside Isaiah as he pulled up grainy security footage on his tablet. The timestamp showed a date 6 years ago, and she watched as a younger version of herself stumbled through a hotel corridor, clearly disoriented. She was wearing the black dress she'd worn to the Sterling Technologies company party that night, the one that had been supposed to be a celebration of the quarter's success. In the video, someone was with her, a woman with dark hair Amara didn't recognize. The woman was practically carrying her, guiding her to a room. Then the video jumped to a different angle, and Amara saw the woman leave the room 10 minutes later, adjusting her own dress, looking satisfied. "That's Catherine Morrison," Isaiah said. She was Victoria Sterling's executive assistant at the time. She left Sterling Technologies 2 months after this incident. Victoria paid her $200,000 through a shell company 3 days after that night. "I'm tracing all of Victoria's financial records now. Can you see who else entered that room? The footage is corrupted for the next hour," Isaiah said. "Deliberately corrupted. Someone with access to the hotel's security system wiped it. But I'm working on recovering the deleted data. It's complicated, but I think I can do it." Before Amara could respond, her phone rang again. This time it was a number she recognized, Keisha, her half-sister. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Amara, you need to listen to me," Keisha said, her voice urgent. "Mom is working with Victoria Sterling. They've been planning this for months. Victoria found out about your marriage to Damien somehow, and she approached Mom with a deal. If Mom helps destroy your credibility and get you to sign away your rights, Victoria will give her $2 million. And Amara, they're going to come after Isaiah. They're going to claim you're an unfit mother, that he needs to be in protective services. They have a judge lined up and everything." "Why are you telling me this?" There was a long pause. "Because I'm tired of being Mom's attack dog. Because I've watched her destroy you for years, and I thought it was just family drama, but this is different. This is criminal. And I don't want to be part of it anymore." "What do they have planned?" "Victoria's holding a press conference tomorrow morning. She's going to announce that Damien Sterling is filing for annulment of the marriage contract on grounds of fraud. She's going to present evidence that you've been trying to extort the Sterling family. And she's going to reveal that you're pregnant, implying that you're trying to pass off another man's children as Damien's. Mom's going to appear as a witness, talking about your supposed history of instability." Amara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on her. They were going to bury her before she even had a chance to fight back. "There's more," Keisha continued. "Victoria has someone inside Child Protective Services. As soon as that press conference happens, there's going to be a wellness check on Isaiah. They're going to find evidence, planted evidence, of neglect. They're going to take him, Amara. And once they do, they'll use that to prove you're unfit to raise the twins too." "When is the wellness check supposed to happen?" "Tomorrow afternoon, right after the press conference creates enough media pressure. You've got maybe 16 hours. Amara looked at Isaiah, who was listening to every word, his young face serious. "Thank you for the warning," as she said to Keisha. "I know this wasn't easy. Just, be careful, okay? Victoria Sterling isn't someone you want as an enemy. She's destroyed bigger people than you." After hanging up, Amara sat in silence for a moment, processing. Then she turned to Isaiah. "We need to move faster than I thought. Can you get me into Sterling Technologies tonight?" "I can get you into any building in New York City," Isaiah said matter-of-factly. "But what's your plan?" "I'm going to do what Victoria thinks is impossible. I'm going to talk to Damien Sterling. Face to face. Tonight. And I'm going to tell him the truth before she has a chance to poison him against me. He might not believe you. Then you're going to help me prove it." Amara stood, her mind racing through possibilities. "Can you hack into Sterling Technologies building security? I need to know Damien's schedule, Where he is right now. Isaiah's fingers flew across his tablet. He's in his office on the 47th floor. He's been there since 6 a.m. According to his calendar, he has no more meetings today, but he typically works until midnight. Security on his floor is heavy: biometric scanners, rotating guards, encrypted elevator access. Can you get me past all that? Yes. But Mummar, once you're in there, you're on your own. If security catches you, they'll arrest you for trespassing, and that'll just play into Victoria's narrative about you being unstable and desperate. I know. Amara grabbed her coat, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. She looked tired, her natural hair pulled back in a simple bun, her maternity clothes hanging loose on her frame. She didn't look like someone who belonged in a billionaire's office tower. But maybe that would work in her favor. Maybe Damien Sterling needed to see the reality of what his family's machinations had done. Stay on your tablet, as she told Isaiah. Guide me through. And Zay, if anything goes wrong, if I don't come back, you call 911 and then you call Mrs. Patterson next door. You understand? Nothing's going to go wrong, Isaiah said with the absolute confidence of someone who'd never failed at anything he'd attempted. I've mapped 17 different routes through the building. I've created a temporary security clearance in the system under a maintenance contractor's credentials. I've looped the security camera feeds on the 47th floor to show empty corridors. And I've unlocked the private elevator that goes directly to Damien Sterling's office. You'll have a 12-minute window before the system automatically resets. That should be enough time. Amara kissed the top of her son's head, marveling once again at the fact that this brilliant, impossible child was hers. What did I do to deserve you? You didn't give up, Isaiah said simply. When everyone else treated me like I was broken or strange, you just loved me and let me be who I am. That's why I'm going to make sure no one takes me or the twins away from you. Because we're a family, and families protect each other. The Sterling Technologies building rose like a gleaming spire of glass and steel in Midtown Manhattan, dominating the skyline with its distinctive blue-tinted windows. Amara stood across the street, her heart hammering against her ribs as she watched the security guards patrol the lobby. In her ear, connected via a Bluetooth earpiece Isaiah had rigged, she could hear her son's voice providing real-time guidance. 2 guards at the main entrance, 1 at the security desk, 2 more by the elevators, Isaiah said. But the loading dock entrance on the east side has only 1 guard, and he's on his phone. That's your entry point. Walk like you belong there. Confidence is 90% of bypassing human security. Amara crossed the street, adjusting her coat to hide her pregnant belly as much as possible, and walked toward the loading dock with the purposeful stride of someone who had every right to be there. The guard glanced up from his phone, and she nodded at him with just the right amount of familiarity, not too friendly, not too distant, and kept walking. He returned to his phone without a second glance. I'm in, she whispered. Service elevator to your left, Isaiah directed. It's keyed to maintenance access, which I've temporarily granted to the RFID badge I cloned for you. Hold it up to the reader. Amara pulled out the blank key code Isaiah had somehow programmed and held it to the elevator reader. The doors slid open immediately. She stepped inside, and the elevator began its climb through the building, bypassing all the floors where normal employees worked, heading straight for the executive level. You're going to emerge in a private hallway, Isaiah continued. Turn right, walk to the end, 3rd door on the left. That's Damien's office. Security cameras are showing empty corridors, so no one's monitoring you. But Mama, his executive assistant's desk is right outside that door. Her name is Margaret Chen, and she's been with the company for 15 years. She's loyal to Damien, not to Victoria. If you're going to have an ally in this, it might be her. The elevator doors opened onto a corridor that screamed money and power, polished marble floors, original artwork on the walls, floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of the Manhattan skyline. Amara took a deep breath and walked forward, each step feeling surreal. 24 hours ago, her biggest concern had been meeting a client deadline. Now she was breaking into her husband's office to tell him he was her husband. The absurdity of the situation would have been funny if the stakes weren't so devastatingly high. She found the door Isaiah had indicated and saw the executive assistant's desk, empty, the computer dark. It was past 9 p.m. Of course, the assistant had gone home. Amara approached the door to the office beyond and raised her hand to knock, then hesitated. What was she going to say? How did you even begin a conversation like this? Mama, someone's coming, Isaiah said urgently. Different elevator, heading to that floor. You need to get inside now. Amara tried the door handle, locked. Zay, I can't. Override coming through in 3, 2, 1. The lock clicked. Amara pushed the door open and slipped inside just as she heard the elevator doors open down the hall. She closed the door as quietly as possible and turned to find herself in an office that was somehow both impressive and impersonal. Massive desk, walls lined with bookshelves, more windows offering that stunning view. And sitting behind the desk, looking up from his laptop with an expression of complete shock, was Damien Sterling. He was more intimidating in person than in photographs. Tall even while sitting, with broad shoulders and a presence that seemed to fill the room. He wore his suit jacket draped over his chair, his white shirt sleeves rolled up, and there was a tiredness around his eyes that the professional photos hadn't captured. Who are you? He asked, his voice sharp but not hostile. How did you get past security? My name is Amara Johnson, Isha said, forcing her voice to remain steady. And I'm your wife. Damien stared at her for a long moment, then reached for his phone. I'm calling security. Please don't. Just give me 5 minutes. 5 minutes to explain, and then if you want me to leave, I'll leave. You broke into my office to tell me you're my wife. That's either the worst pickup line I've ever heard or you're genuinely delusional, and either way, I want you removed from this building. Marcus Sterling, Amara said desperately. Your grandfather. 6 years ago, before he died, he arranged a marriage contract between us. It's legally binding. I have the documents. I never knew why he did it, and I don't think you knew either, but it's real. We're legally married. Damien's hand hesitated over his phone. My grandfather died 6 years ago. He was suffering from dementia toward the end. He made a lot of arrangements that weren't lucid or legally sound. This one was. I had lawyers verify it after I received the paperwork. I didn't want it, didn't ask for it, but it exists. Then why am I only hearing about it now? Because I never intended to contact you. I was happy to leave it as a legal technicality, a piece of paper that didn't mean anything. But circumstances have changed. Let me guess, you need money. Damien's voice was cold now, dismissive. You're going to tell me some sob story about being in trouble, needing help, and oh, by the way, we're married so I should just write you a check. I'm pregnant, Amara said. With twins. And they're yours. The silence that followed was absolute. Damien stood slowly, and Amara realized just how tall he was, how physically imposing. But there was something else in his expression now, beneath the anger and suspicion, something that looked almost like pain. That's impossible, he said quietly. 6 years ago, there was a company party at Sterling Technologies. I was working there, in the cybersecurity division. I was invited to the party, and someone drugged me. I woke up the next morning in a hotel room with no memory of most of the night. 3 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. I had a son, Isaiah. He's 5 years old now. And he's yours. You expect me to believe that I fathered a child with someone I've never met? That I somehow don't remember any of this? Because you were drugged too, Iamara said. It was set up. By people who wanted to compromise you, or compromise me, or create exactly this situation. I don't know all the details yet, but I'm starting to piece it together. This is insane. But Damien wasn't reaching for his phone anymore. He was staring at Amara like he was trying to solve an equation that wouldn't balance. I know how it sounds. But there's more. The twins I'm carrying, they have a genetic blood disorder. They're going to need bone marrow transplants within 48 hours of being born, or they'll die. And according to the National Registry, you're the only perfect match. Your DNA is compatible in a way that suggests paternal lineage. How would you even know my DNA markers? My son hacked the bone marrow registry, Iamara said, and despite everything, she felt a flash of pride. He's 5 years old, and he's a genius. He taught himself to code when he was 3. He can break into any system, navigate any network. And when he found out his siblings were in danger, he tracked you down. He proved you're his father. And now I'm here because I don't have any other choice. I need you to take a paternity test. I need you to be there for the twins when they're born. I need you to save their lives. Damien walked to the windows, staring out at the city lights. When he spoke, his voice was different, quieter, more vulnerable. 6 years ago, I woke up in a hotel room with gaps in my memory. I thought I'd had too much to drink at the company party. But I didn't drink that night. I never drink at company events. And I couldn't explain the gaps, couldn't explain why I felt so disoriented. He turned back to face her. I spent months trying to figure out what happened that night. I had our security team investigate. They found nothing. No evidence of anything unusual, no explanations. Just, a blank space where several hours should have been. Someone covered it up, Iamara said. Someone with access to security systems, with the power to erase evidence. Victoria. Damien's jaw tightened. My cousin. She's been trying to take control of Sterling Technologies for years. She was COO until I forced her out after I discovered she'd been embezzling funds. But she still has allies on the board, still has influence. She came to my apartment tonight, Iamara said. She wants me to sign away any claim to your family's assets, give up custody of my children, and disappear. She's planning a press conference tomorrow morning to destroy my credibility before I can tell you any of this. Of course she is. Damien returned to his desk and pulled out his phone, but this time he wasn't calling security. Margaret, I need you to come back to the office. Yes, I know what time it is. This is urgent. He hung up and looked at Amara. My executive assistant. If anyone can verify what you're saying about the marriage contract, she can. She handled all of my grandfather's legal affairs in his final years. Thank you, Iamara breathed. Don't thank me yet. I'm not saying I believe you. I'm saying I'm willing to investigate. There's a difference. But his eyes kept drifting to her pregnant belly, and Amara could see him doing the mental math, calculating timelines. Can I ask you something? Amara said. You've broken into my office and appended my entire understanding of reality. I think one question is acceptable. Why did your grandfather arrange the marriage contract? Did he ever mention me? Damien was quiet for a moment. He talked about you. Near the end, when the dementia was starting to take hold but he still had lucid moments, he said you were brilliant. He said you saw things in our security systems that our entire team had missed. He said you were going to be important, that you were going to change everything. He paused. And then you disappeared. You were fired, officially for performance issues, but I never understood that because your work had been exemplary. And by the time I thought to look into it, you were gone. Victoria had me fired, Iamara said. After that night. I couldn't prove it, but I knew. And then I found out I was pregnant, and I ran. I couldn't stay in New York, couldn't face the tech industry knowing what had happened. So I took freelance contracts under different names, raised Isaiah on my own, tried to build a life that made sense. And now you're back because your children need me. Yes. The office door opened, and a woman in her 50s entered, her expression concerned. Damien, what's wrong? Who is? As she stopped, staring at Amara. Oh my God. Amara Johnson. You look exactly like your photo from the employee directory. You remember me? Of course I remember you. Marcus talked about you constantly in his final months. He said, and Margaret looked at Damien. He said you were going to save the company. I never understood what he meant. Margaret, do we have records of a marriage contract between myself and Ms. Johnson? The assistant's face went pale. You know about that? Answer the question. Yes. Marcus executed it 3 days before he died. He had his personal attorney draw it up, not the company lawyers. He said it was insurance, that there were forces trying to destroy Sterling Technologies from within, and that you'd need Amara's skills to survive. He made me promise to keep the contract sealed unless certain conditions were met. What conditions? If Victoria ever attempted a hostile takeover. If the company's security systems were ever compromised in a way that threatened the core infrastructure. Or if, and Margaret looked at Amara. If Amara Johnson ever came to you claiming to be your wife. He said if any of those 3 things happened, I was to unseal the contract and help you understand what he'd done. Which was what, exactly? He was trying to protect you from Victoria. He knew she was planning something, knew she was going to make a move after his death. He thought if you were legally bound to Amara, if there was a marriage contract, it would complicate Victoria's schemes. And he believed Amara had the skills to help you uncover whatever conspiracy Victoria was building. Damien sat heavily in his chair, processing this. So my grandfather essentially arranged a strategic marriage to counter a corporate takeover. He cared about you, and Margaret said gently. Everything he did was to protect you and the company he built. Even if his methods were unorthodox. Mamar, you need to leave now. Isaiah's voice came through the earpiece, urgent. Building security just got an alert about a door access anomaly. They're sending someone to the 47th floor to investigate. You've got about 3 minutes. Amara touched her ear, forgetting for a moment that no one else could hear Isaiah. I need to go. Security's coming. How do you? Damien started, then understanding dawned. Your son. He's monitoring the building systems right now, isn't he? He wanted to make sure I was safe. A 5-year-old is actively hacking Sterling Technologies' security infrastructure as we speak. He's very protective, Iamara said. And before you get angry about the security breach, you should know that your systems have multiple vulnerabilities that could be exploited by someone much less friendly than my son. Despite everything, Damien laughed, a short, sharp sound that held more surprise than humor. This is the most surreal night of my life, and I've had some deeply strange nights. He pulled a business card from his desk and wrote something on the back. My personal number. Call me tomorrow morning. We'll do the paternity test. I'll have my doctor come to wherever you're staying, completely private. And then we'll figure out what happens next. Victoria's press conference. I'll handle Victoria. I should have dealt with her permanently years ago. He walked Amara to the door. Margaret, I need you to pull all of Marcus's sealed documents related to Ms. Johnson. Everything. I want to know exactly what my grandfather was thinking. Of course. In the hallway, Amara could hear the elevator arriving. I need to hide, Ishi said. This way. Damien guided her to a door she hadn't noticed, a private stairwell. 2 floors down, there's an exit that leads to the parking garage. Can your son guide you from there? Yes. Then go. And Ms. Johnson? Amara. If you're telling the truth about all of this, if those twins are mine, I will do everything in my power to keep them safe. You have my word on that. Amara nodded, not trusting her voice, and hurried down the stairwell. In her ear, Isaiah was already mapping her route through the parking garage, guiding her around security cameras and guard posts with the casual expertise of someone who could see the entire building systems laid out like a blueprint in his mind. She made it to the street and caught a cab back to Brooklyn, her heart still racing. When she walked into the apartment, Isaiah looked up from his tablet with a satisfied expression. You did good, Memar. Damien Sterling believes you, at least enough to investigate. That's all we needed. What happens now? Now we prepare for Victoria's press conference. Because she's not going to let this go just because Damien takes a paternity test. She's going to escalate. She's going to try to force Damien's hand before he can learn the truth. Isaiah's fingers flew across his screen. I'm already working on a contingency plan. If Victoria goes public tomorrow, I'm going to go public too. And when I do, the whole world is going to see exactly who she is and what she's done. Amara sat beside her son, and together they worked through the night, a 5-year-old genius and his mother preparing for war with one of New York's most powerful families. By dawn, they had a plan. It was risky, possibly insane, but it was all they had. And when Victoria Sterling stepped up to her press conference podium at 10 a.m., confident and perfectly styled, ready to destroy Amara's life, she had no idea that Isaiah Johnson was about to show the world exactly how much damage a 5-year-old hacker could do when his family was threatened. The press conference was being held at the Sterling Plaza Hotel, the same hotel where Amara had woken up 6 years ago with her life in ruins. Victoria had chosen the location deliberately, Amara was certain. Another layer of psychological warfare. Amara watched the live stream from her apartment, Isaiah beside her with 3 tablets running different programs simultaneously. On the main screen, Victoria stood at a podium with the Sterling Technologies logo behind her, looking confident and composed. Behind her stood Diane Harrison, Amara's stepmother, wearing an expression of carefully practiced concern. Thank you all for coming, Victoria began. I'm here today to address a troubling situation involving my cousin, Damien Sterling, CEO of Sterling Technologies. It has come to my attention that a woman named Amara Johnson has been making fraudulent claims about being married to Damien and carrying his children. These claims are completely false, and we have evidence that Ms. Johnson has a history of unstable behavior and manipulative tactics. The cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Victoria raised her hand for silence. I want to be clear, Damien Sterling has never met this woman. There is no marriage, there are no children, and there is certainly no truth to any of her assertions. What we have instead is a woman who is attempting to extort money from one of New York's most prominent families, using her pregnancy as leverage. And I'm here today to say that this ends now. She gestured to Diane, who stepped forward. I'm Diane Harrison, Amara Johnson's stepmother. I've known Amara since she was a child, and I'm heartbroken to stand here today. But the truth needs to be told. Amara has always been troubled. She's struggled with reality, made false accusations, caused chaos in every situation she's entered. When she claimed 6 years ago that something had happened to her at a company party, we investigated thoroughly and found no evidence of any wrongdoing. What we found instead was a pattern of attention-seeking behavior. Amara's hands clenched. Isaiah put his small hand over hers. "Wait," he said softly. "Wait for it." On screen, Victoria continued. "We're here today to protect Damien Sterling from these malicious accusations, and to protect the integrity of Sterling Technologies. We filed for a restraining order against Ms. Johnson, and we're working with Child Protective Services to ensure that her existing child is in a safe environment. No one wants to take a child from his mother, but when that mother is demonstrably unstable." Every screen in the press conference room suddenly went black. The live stream cut to static. Then, one by one, the screens came back on, but instead of showing Victoria, they showed something else entirely. Security camera footage from 6 years ago. The Grand View Plaza Hotel. Amara stumbling through a corridor, clearly drugged, being led by Catherine Morrison. Timestamp, date stamp, everything clearly visible. "What is this?" Victoria's voice, shrill now, barely audible over the confusion in the room. The footage changed. Financial records appeared on screen, wire transfers from Victoria Sterling's accounts to Catherine Morrison, to Diane Harrison, to a dozen other people. Each transfer labelled with coded notes that Isaiah had decrypted: a silence fee, a evidence disposal, a testimony payment. Then the screen split into multiple views. In one corner, text messages between Victoria and Diane, planning how to destroy Amara's credibility. In another, medical records showing that both Damien and Amara had tested positive for Rohypnol the morning after that hotel incident, tests that had been buried and sealed. In a third, emails from Victoria to board members, outlining her plan to seize control of Sterling Technologies once Damien was sufficiently destabilized. And in the center of all these screens, a simple message in large text: "You should have left my family alone. Isaiah Johnson, age 5. The press conference erupted into chaos. Reporters were shouting questions at Victoria, who stood frozen at the podium. Diane had gone ghost white. Camera crews were scrambling to capture footage of the screens. And somewhere in that room, Amara imagined, building security was frantically trying to figure out how a child had just hijacked their entire system. Isaiah calmly picked up a burner phone and dialed. When someone answered, he said in his clear, precise voice, "This is Isaiah Johnson. I'm 5 years old, and I've just exposed Victoria Sterling's conspiracy to defraud my family and attempt to seize control of Sterling Technologies. I'm sending you the complete evidence package now: financial records, security footage, medical documents, and communications. You'll find everything you need to file criminal charges. My mother and I are available to provide testimony whenever necessary. We'll be waiting to hear from you." He hung up and looked at Amara. That was the Manhattan District Attorney's office. "I've been in contact with them since 3 a.m., building a case. They were waiting for Victoria to commit to her story publicly before moving forward. She just did. Zay, you just. I told you I'd fix it, Mamar. I see problems, and I fix them." Amara's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Your son is terrifying. I'm in the car heading to your location now. We need to talk. Damien." 20 minutes later, Damien Sterling was standing in Amara's small apartment, looking completely out of place among the modest furniture and children's toys. He wore jeans and a leather jacket. Apparently he'd left the office in such a hurry he hadn't bothered with his usual CEO uniform. "I need to meet him," Damien said without preamble. "The child who just took down my cousin's conspiracy and made international news in the process. I need to meet my son." Isaiah appeared from his room, holding his tablet, looking exactly like what he was, a small 5-year-old wearing dinosaur pajamas. But when he met Damien's gaze, there was nothing childlike in his eyes. "Hello, father," Isaiah said formally. "I apologize for the dramatic reveal, but Victoria Sterling didn't leave us with many options. She was planning to have Mummar declared unfit and take me into protective custody this afternoon. I had to move quickly." Damien stared at the child, his child, and Amara saw the moment the reality of it hit him. This brilliant, impossible, magnificent boy was his. This little person who just orchestrated the downfall of a corrupt executive and exposed a 6-year conspiracy was his son. "You did all that?" Damien asked, his voice rough. "The press conference, the hacking, the evidence compilation?" "Yes. Mummar helped with some of the investigative work, but the technical execution was mine. I've been preparing for 3 days. I knew Victoria would make a move once she realized we'd contacted you." Isaiah paused. "I also took the liberty of running your genetic markers against the twins' ultrasound data. They're definitely your children. The blood disorder they have is hereditary. It comes from your maternal grandmother's line. There's a recessive gene that only manifests when both parents carry it. My mother's mother died from complications related to beta thalassemia," Damien said slowly. "I'm a carrier. And so is Mummar. The odds were approximately 1 in 47 that any children you conceived together would have the disorder. Ionor and Malik, the twins, are that statistical anomaly. They'll need your bone marrow within 48 hours of birth to survive." "When are they due?" 6 weeks and 4 days, Amara said. "But my doctor thinks they might come early. Twins often do." Damien moved to sit on the couch, seeming to need the support. "I have children. 3 children. I've been a father for 5 years and I didn't know." "You didn't know because Victoria Sterling engineered a situation designed to destroy both you and Mummar," Isaiah said matter-of-factly. "She drugged both of you, arranged for you to be in the same hotel room, and then tried to use the situation to blackmail Mummar. When that didn't work, when Mummar was fired and disappeared, Victoria thought the problem was solved. She didn't know Mummar was pregnant. She didn't know about me. And she certainly didn't expect me to have the skills necessary to expose her." "Why?" Damien looked at Isaiah. "Why did she do all this?" "Control of Sterling Technologies. Your grandfathers will left you 70% of the voting shares, but there's a clause: if you're declared mentally incapacitated or unable to fulfill your duties as CEO, those shares pass to a board-appointed successor. Victoria has been working for years to create situations that would make you appear unstable. The drugging incident 6 years ago was supposed to be the first of many. She planned to gradually undermine your credibility until the board had no choice but to remove you. But my grandfather figured out what she was planning." "Yes. And he arranged the marriage contract with Mummar as a safeguard. He believed Mummar could help you, that her skills would be crucial in exposing Victoria's schemes. He was right." Isaiah looked at Amara with something that might have been pride. "Mumma is brilliant. She just needed someone to help her see how brilliant she is." There was a knock at the door. Amara checked the peephole and saw 2 men in suits standing in the hallway, holding badges. "FBI," one of them said. "We need to speak with Isaiah Johnson and Amara Johnson regarding evidence submitted to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office." Damien stood immediately. "I'll handle this. I'm their attorney." "You're not a practicing attorney," Amara said. "I have a law degree from Harvard and I'm licensed to practice in New York. I just chose not to. But right now, you need representation, and I'm not letting anyone question my family without me present." "His family?" The words hung in the air for a moment. Then Amara nodded and opened the door. The next several hours were a blur of interviews, evidence reviews, and legal consultations. The FBI agents were surprisingly deferential, especially after Isaiah calmly explained how he'd obtained the evidence and assured them that he'd followed proper protocols for digital chain of custody. "This is the most professionally compiled case file I've seen in 20 years with the Bureau," one agent said, looking at Isaiah with something like awe. "You're 5 years old?" "Yes, sir. I'll be 6 in March." "You might want to consider a career in law enforcement when you grow up." "I'm considering several career paths," Isaiah said seriously. "But I think I'd prefer to work in artificial intelligence development or possibly quantum computing. Law enforcement is important work, but I believe I can contribute more to society through technological advancement." The agent looked at Amara. Your son is extraordinary." "I know," Amara said, and she couldn't help smiling despite the exhaustion and stress. "Believe me, I know." By the time the interviews concluded, it was evening. Victoria Sterling had been arrested, along with Diane Harrison and 3 other co-conspirators. Catherine Morrison was being extradited from California, where she'd been living under an assumed name. The media was having a field day with the story of the 5-year-old hacker who'd exposed a corporate conspiracy. And Amara was sitting in her apartment with Damien Sterling, trying to figure out what happened next. "I have a house in Connecticut," Damien said. 15 bedrooms, staff quarters, security that even your son would have trouble hacking. "I want you to move there. Both of you. Where I can protect you and make sure you have everything you need for the pregnancy. I can't just uproot Isaiah's life." "Mamar, we should go," Isaiah said from his position on the floor, where he'd set up his tablets in a precise arrangement. "The apartment isn't secure anymore. Too many people know where we live now. And the twins need medical monitoring that's easier to arrange if we're in a private residence with on-call staff." "You've been researching this," Amara said. "I've been researching everything. I have 17 contingency plans for various scenarios. Moving to the Connecticut house is contingency plan number 3. What was contingency plan number 1? Relocating to Switzerland and assuming new identities, Isaiah said without looking up. But that seemed unnecessarily dramatic now that Victoria has been arrested. Damien laughed, really laughed this time, the sound filling the small apartment. "He's definitely my son. I had a similar Switzerland plan when Victoria first started making her moves 2 years ago. The genetic predisposition for strategic paranoia is quite strong in our family line," Isaiah observed. "I've been mapping it. We also have elevated risk factors for perfectionism and insomnia." "You've been awake for 40 hours, Amara realized suddenly. "Zay, you need to sleep." "I need to monitor the situation to ensure there are no remaining threats." "I'll monitor the situation," Damien said. "I'll sit right here with your tablets, and if anything concerning happens, I'll wake you immediately. You have my word." Isaiah studied Damien for a long moment, and Amara could practically see him running some kind of assessment algorithm in his head. Finally, he nodded. "Acceptable. But if any of my security alerts trigger, wake me immediately." "Deal." Isaiah went to his room, and Amara heard the sounds of him settling into bed. She sat beside Damien on the couch, suddenly aware of how close they were, how surreal this entire situation was. "I have 3 children, Damien said quietly. I keep saying it in my head, trying to make it real. 3 children. A 5-year-old genius who just took down a corporate conspiracy. And twins who are going to need my bone marrow to survive." "I'm sorry," Amara said. "I know this wasn't what you signed up for. The marriage contract, the pregnancy, all of it, None of this is fair to you. Fair? Damien turned to look at her, and she was startled by the intensity in his eyes. Victoria drugged us and tried to use that situation to destroy both our lives. She had you fired, isolated, driven out of the industry you loved. She spent 6 years plotting to steal my company. And in the process, she kept me from knowing about my son, from being there for you during the pregnancy, from seeing Isaiah's first steps or hearing his first words. Nothing about any of this is fair. But that's not your fault, Amara. That's Victoria's fault. And she's going to spend the next decade in prison paying for what she did. Still, I know this isn't the life you imagined. I didn't imagine any life, Damien said. After my grandfather died, after I took over the company, I just worked. I built the business, fought off threats, made money, and called it a life. I didn't date, didn't have relationships, didn't think about family. And now suddenly I have a family. A ready-made family with a brilliant son and 2 more children on the way. And yes, it's terrifying. Yes, I have no idea what I'm doing. But Amara, it's also the first thing in 6 years that's made me feel like I'm living instead of just surviving. Amara felt tears prick her eyes. I've been so angry for so long. Angry at what happened, angry at the people who did it, angry at how hard everything has been. But looking at Isaiah, seeing what has become despite everything, I can't regret it. I can't regret any of it because he's the best thing that ever happened to me. Tell me about him, Damien said. Tell me everything. I want to know what I missed. So Amara talked, and Damien listened. She told him about Isaiah's first words, which had been not a mumari or a dardar but a algorithm. She told him about the first time Isaiah had hacked something, the parental controls on their TV when he was 3, and how she'd realized then that her son wasn't going to have a conventional childhood. She told him about the challenges and the triumphs, the specialists who didn't understand and the teachers who did, the lonely nights when she'd wondered if she was enough for this extraordinary child. And Damien told her about the company, about the battles with Victoria and the board, about his grandfather's final days and the cryptic things he'd said about Amara. He told her about the investigation he'd launched after that night 6 years ago, how frustrated he'd been when every lead turned into a dead end, how he'd sometimes wondered if he was losing his mind. They talked until dawn, until the first light started filtering through the apartment windows, until they heard Isaiah's door open and saw him emerge, looking considerably more rested. Good morning, Isaiah said. I've reviewed overnight developments while I was sleeping. I have alerts set up, and the situation appears stable. Victoria and her co-conspirators are in custody. The media narrative has shifted significantly in our favor. And farther, your stock price is up 7% because investors are viewing this as evidence of strong leadership and ethical governance. I'd recommend issuing a statement this morning confirming the family connection and announcing some policy changes at Sterling Technologies. You've been awake for what, 10 minutes? Damien said. 8 minutes and 43 seconds. But I process information quickly upon waking. Isaiah sat at the table with his tablet. Also, I've been monitoring Mumar's medical data, and I think the twins might come sooner than expected. Her blood pressure has been elevated for the past week, and there are early indicators of preeclampsia. I'd recommend moving to the Connecticut house today, so we're closer to the private medical facility you mentioned. Amara touched her belly, feeling the twins move. I have felt off lately. I thought it was just stress. It's definitely stress, but it's also a medical condition that needs monitoring. Isaiah looked at Damien. The facility you mentioned, does it have a level 3 NICU? Level 4. It's one of the best in the country. Good. Because if the twins come early, they'll need intensive care beyond just the bone marrow transplant. Isaiah pulled up a chart on his tablet. I've been modeling various scenarios. Optimal outcome requires birth at 35 weeks minimum, immediate transplant of bone marrow from father, and ongoing care for approximately 6 weeks. Probability of successful outcome with proper medical intervention is 94.7%. And without proper intervention? Amara asked, even though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Below 20%. Isaiah said it matter-of-factly, but Amara saw his hands tighten slightly on the tablet. He was scared, she realized. Beneath all the brilliance and clinical analysis, he was a 5-year-old boy who was terrified of losing his siblings before he even got to meet them. Amara moved to sit beside him, wrapping an arm around his small shoulders. We're going to do everything right, Zay. We're going to make sure your brother and sister are okay. I know, Isaiah said, leaning into her embrace. I've calculated all the variables. As long as we follow optimal protocols, the outcome should be favorable. I want to meet them, Mama. I want to teach them things and protect them and be their big brother. You will be, Damien said, his voice rough with emotion. You're going to be an amazing big brother. And I'm going to be there too. For all 3 of you. I promise. The move to Connecticut happened within hours. Damien's staff appeared with a moving truck and professional organizers who carefully packed everything in Amara's apartment. Isaiah supervised, providing detailed instructions about which items needed special handling, mostly his electronics equipment and the dinosaur collection that was, according to him, organizationally optimized. The house was beautiful in a way that made Amara's breath catch, stone and glass and wood, nestled in acres of private land, with views of rolling hills. Isaiah immediately claimed a room on the 2nd floor that had good natural light and proximity to the main security panel, which he informed everyone he'd be upgrading. Amara's room was a suite larger than her entire Brooklyn apartment had been, with a bathroom featuring a tub big enough to swim in and a walk-in closet that echoed when she stepped inside. Through the windows, she could see a garden, bare now in winter but clearly maintained with care. This is too much, as she told Damien, who was standing in the doorway watching her take it all in. It's what you and the children need. The medical facility is 10 minutes away. My office is here in the house, so I can work without being far from you. The security system is military grade, though I'm sure Isaiah will still find flaws in it. I already have. Isaiah's voice came from down the hall. I'm writing up a report. Damien smiled. Of course you are. He looked at Amara. I know this is fast. I know we barely know each other. But we have time now. Time to figure out who we are to each other. Time to build something real instead of just being strangers tied together by legal documents. I'd like that, Amara said softly. Getting to know you. Building something real. The next 6 weeks were unlike anything Amara had experienced. She saw the best doctors, had round-the-clock monitoring, and slowly watched as a medical team confirmed what Isaiah had predicted. The twins were going to come early, and they were going to need immediate intervention. But those weeks were also filled with small moments that felt like building blocks of a life. Family dinners where Isaiah explained quantum mechanics while eating chicken nuggets. Movie nights where they discovered Isaiah had strong opinions about plot structure and pacing. Moments when Damien would place his hand on Amara's belly and feel the twins move, his expression full of wonder. And conversations, so many conversations, as Amara and Damien slowly learned each other. His love of classical music and terrible action movies. Her passion for coding and her secret talent for baking. The way he was meticulous about morning routines. The way she sang without realizing it when she was concentrating. All the tiny details that turned strangers into something more. Isaiah watched it all with his analytical mind, and occasionally made observations like, your cortisol levels are significantly lower when you're together. The relationship is physiologically beneficial for both of you. Thank you, Dr. Isaiah, Iamara would say. I'm not a doctor yet, Mumar. But I've been accepted to several online university programs. I'm thinking about pursuing a degree in neuroscience while I'm working on my AI development projects. You're 5. Almost 6, Isaiah corrected. An age is just a number. Knowledge is what matters. At 34 weeks, Amara's water broke. The medical team sprang into action with practiced efficiency, and within an hour, she was in the private medical facility with Damien holding her hand and Isaiah watching from behind a glass partition, his face pressed against it with intense concentration. The delivery was complicated, twins often were, but the medical team was prepared. Ionor was born first, tiny and perfect and screaming with impressive lung power. Then Malik, smaller and quieter, but breathing steadily. And then the real work began. Damien underwent the bone marrow extraction procedure while the twins were stabilized in the NICU. It was painful and exhausting, but he never complained, just asked repeatedly if there was enough, if it would be sufficient to save them. The transplants happened simultaneously, 2 teams working with precision to give Ionor and Malik the bone marrow that would save their lives. Amara couldn't be there, she was recovering from the delivery, but Isaiah provided minute-by-minute updates, his voice steady despite the fear she could hear underneath it. First stage complete for both babies. Marrow is integrating. Immune response is normal. This is good, Mumar. This is what we hoped for. Hours passed. Days. The twins fought in their incubators, tiny warriors battling against the disorder that had threatened them before they even took their first breath. And gradually, slowly, the doctors started using words like a promising air and encouraging. 1 week after the transplants, Amara was finally allowed to hold both twins at once, Isaiah perched beside her on the hospital bed, staring at his siblings with absolute fascination. They're so small, he whispered. I was this small once. Even smaller, Iamara said. You were a preemie too. But I survived. And they're going to survive too. The data supports it. He gently touched Ionor's tiny hand, and her fingers curled around his. Hello, sister. I'm Isaiah. I'm going to teach you everything I know. That might take a while, Damien said from the doorway. He'd been discharged from his own procedure but had barely left the NICU, sleeping in chairs, reviewing medical updates, being present in the way he hadn't been able to be for Isaiah. I have detailed curriculum plans already developed, Isaiah said seriously. Ionor shows higher heart rate variability, which correlates with emotional sensitivity. She'll likely be more artistic, more empathetic. Malik has a more stable baseline, better neural regulation patterns. He'll probably be analytical like me. I'll need to adjust my teaching approaches accordingly. Or we could just let them be babies for a while, Iamara suggested gently. They can be babies while I'm teaching them. The two aren't mutually exclusive. 2 months later, the doctors cleared the twins to go home. They'd gained weight, their blood counts were stable, and the bone marrow transplants had been successful. They would need ongoing monitoring and treatment, but they were going to survive. They were going to thrive. The house in Connecticut filled with the sounds of infant twins, crying and cooing and all the beautiful chaos that came with newborns. Isaiah appointed himself as head of twin supervision, setting up monitors and schedules and providing detailed reports on their development. Ionor smiled today, he announced one morning at breakfast. A real smile, not just gas. She was looking at the mobile in her crib, and she smiled. I have it on video. Show me, Iamara said, and Isaiah pulled up the footage with pride. Life found a rhythm. Amara started doing consulting work for Sterling Technologies, rebuilding the security systems that had been compromised. Damien restructured the company's board and instituted new ethics policies. Isaiah started first grade at a school for gifted children, where he immediately became both a favorite and a challenge for his teachers. And slowly, carefully, Amara and Damien's relationship evolved from a legal contract to something real. It started with co-parenting, with shared responsibilities and mutual respect. It grew through late-night conversations while feeding the twins, through the way he brought her coffee exactly how she liked it, through the way she could read his moods and knew when he needed space or support. 6 months after the twins were born, Damien found Amara in the garden, watching Isaiah teach the twins, who were far too young to understand, about the different types of clouds. Cumulus clouds indicate fair weather, Isaiah was explaining to them seriously. But if you see cumulonimbus formations, that means storms. I'll teach you the full classification system when you're older. Is going to be insufferable when they actually start talking back to him, Damien said, sitting beside Amara on the bench. He's already insufferable. It's part of his charm. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching their children. Then Damien said, I want to ask you something. And I want you to feel completely free to say no. Okay. We're legally married. We have 3 children together. We've built a life over the past 8 months that I never knew I wanted, but now can't imagine living without. And Amara, I've fallen in love with you. Not because of the circumstances, not because of obligation, but because of who you are, brilliant and strong and funny and kind. You're an amazing mother, an extraordinary partner, and you make me want to be better than I am. Amara felt her breath catch. Damien. So I want to ask if you'd marry me. Really marry me. Not because of a contract my grandfather arranged, but because we choose each other. Because we want to build this life together deliberately, intentionally. I want to stand up in front of everyone we care about and promise to love you and our children for the rest of my life. What do you think? Amara looked at him, really looked at him, this man who'd been a stranger 8 months ago and was now the center of her world. She thought about everything they'd survived, everything they'd built, all the small moments that had woven them together into something stronger than either of them alone. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. Really marry you. Damien kissed her, soft and sweet, and from across the garden came Isaiah's voice. I knew this would happen. I calculated a 92% probability of romantic partnership development given your compatible personality profiles and shared trauma bonding experiences. I'm pleased my analysis was correct. Our son is literally analyzing our relationship dynamics while explaining meteorology to infants, Damien said against Amara's lips. I know. Isn't it wonderful? And it was. All of it was wonderful. The chaos and the love, the brilliant 5-year-old and the thriving twins, the man who'd become her partner in every sense of the word. It was nothing like the life Amara had imagined, nothing like what she'd planned for. But it was real, and it was theirs, and it was worth every struggle that had brought them here. The wedding happened 3 months later, a small ceremony with just the people who mattered most. Isaiah was the best man, taking his duties extremely seriously and providing detailed commentary on the optimal pacing of wedding vows. The twins were there too, dressed in matching outfits that Amara had spent hours picking out, sleeping peacefully through most of the ceremony. When Damien kissed his bride, really his bride this time, chosen and cherished, Isaiah was heard to murmur. Optimal outcome achieved. And in the years that followed, that outcome proved to be more than optimal. Sterling Technologies flourished under new ethical leadership. Amara launched her own cybersecurity firm and became a leader in her field. Isaiah's genius continued to unfold in new and astonishing directions. By age 8, he'd published papers on artificial intelligence ethics, and by 10, he was consulting for major tech companies on security vulnerabilities. Honor, true to Isaiah's early assessment, grew into a creative and empathetic child with a gift for art and music. Malik was analytical and thoughtful, with a particular fascination for robotics and engineering. They were different from each other and different from Isaiah, but they were all extraordinary in their own ways. And through it all, Amara and Damien built something rare and precious, a real marriage based on choice and love and mutual respect. They had their challenges, their disagreements, their difficult moments. But they faced them together, as partners, as friends, as people who'd chosen each other deliberately and kept choosing each other every day. Victoria Sterling served 12 years in prison for conspiracy, fraud, and attempted corporate espionage. When she was released, she found herself professionally ruined and personally isolated, her schemes having cost her everything she'd fought for. Diane Harrison faced similar consequences, and Amara never spoke to her stepmother again. But Amara also learned to let go of the anger. She had too much good in her life to waste time on bitterness. She had her children, all 3 of them healthy and thriving and remarkable. She had her work, which she loved. She had a partner who supported her dreams and shared her life. She had built something meaningful from the ruins Victoria had tried to create. And on Isaiah's 16th birthday, when he gave the keynote speech at a major tech conference about the intersection of artificial intelligence and human ethics, Amara and Damien sat in the audience with 12-year-old Ayana and Malik, watching their oldest son articulate ideas that would reshape entire industries. Remember when he was 5 and hacking into corporate databases from his bedroom? Damien whispered to Amara. Remember when you were strangers and I broke into your office to tell you we were married? Amara whispered back. Best break-in I've ever experienced. On stage, Isaiah was talking about responsibility, about using extraordinary abilities for good, about the importance of protecting the vulnerable. He was brilliant and passionate and completely himself, still a little awkward socially, still intensely focused on his interests, but also confident and kind and determined to make the world better. He's amazing, Ariana said, watching her brother with pride. He really is, Malik agreed. Though his presentation slides could use better graphic design. I'll talk to him about it later. You're going to criticize his slides? Amara asked. Constructive feedback, Malik corrected. It's what siblings do. And Amara smiled, because that was exactly right. That was what families did. They supported each other, challenged each other, helped each other become the best versions of themselves. It had taken a 5-year-old hacker, a corporate conspiracy, and a marriage contract written by a dying man to bring them together. But now that they were together, they were unstoppable. The story that had started with accusation and betrayal, with drugging and conspiracy and corporate warfare, had become something else entirely. It had become a story about family, chosen and cherished and fiercely protected. About love that grew in unexpected places. About 3 extraordinary children and 2 people who learned to be extraordinary together. And if you've been watching this whole journey unfold, if you've been with us from that rainy night in Brooklyn to this moment in the conference hall, maybe you've found something in this story that resonates with you. Maybe it's the idea that our biggest challenges can lead to our greatest blessings. Maybe it's the reminder that family isn't always what we're born into, but what we build. Maybe it's just the satisfaction of watching someone like Victoria get exactly what they deserve. Whatever it is that brought you here, I hope you'll stick around. Hit that like button if Amara and Isaiah's story moved you. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about people who overcome impossible odds. Share this with someone who needs to hear that brilliant, different children like Isaiah are gifts, not burdens. And leave a comment telling me what part of this journey resonated with you most. Was it Isaiah's genius, Amara's strength, Damien's transformation, or the way this fractured family found its way to wholeness? Because at the end of the day, that's what all of us are looking for, isn't it? Wholeness. Connection. A place where we belong and people who see us for who we really are. Amara found it in the last place she expected, in a marriage contract she never wanted, with a man she'd never met, through circumstances that should have destroyed her but instead revealed her strength. And Isaiah, that remarkable 5-year-old who started all of this by hacking into a bone marrow registry because he wanted to save his siblings? He found his father, saved his family, and showed the world that extraordinary doesn't mean broken, different doesn't mean less, and sometimes the smallest person in the room is the one who changes everything. So here's to the Isaiah Johnsons of the world, the brilliant, different, extraordinary children who see solutions where others see problems. Here's to the Amaras, the single mothers who fight impossible battles and refuse to give up. Here's to the Damians, who have the courage to embrace unexpected families and become the parents they never knew they could be. And here's to you, for taking this journey with us. For spending these 2 hours in this world, caring about these characters, investing in their story. That's not a small thing. In a world full of distractions and demands on your attention, you chose to be here. You chose to see this through to the end. Thank you. And if you're wondering what happened next, if Iona's art career took off, if Malik's robotics innovations changed the world, if Isaiah eventually won a Nobel Prize for his work in artificial intelligence ethics, well, those are stories for another day. But I can tell you this, the Johnson-Sterling family continued to be extraordinary, continued to face challenges and overcome them, continued to prove that love and brilliance and determination can triumph over any obstacle. They became the family that Marcus Sterling had envisioned when he wrote that marriage contract, a force of nature, unstoppable and united. And every time Victoria Sterling saw their faces in the news, every time she heard about another of their accomplishments, she was reminded of what she'd lost in her pursuit of power. She'd had everything, privilege, wealth, opportunity, and she'd squandered it on schemes and betrayals. While Amara, who'd started with nothing, had built an empire of love. That's the real victory, in the end. Not the money or the status or the public vindication, though all of those were sweet. The real victory was the family gathered around the dinner table every night, was Isaiah patiently teaching his siblings about quantum mechanics, was Damien and Amara stealing quiet moments together while the children slept, was the sound of laughter echoing through a house that had been empty and was now full. The real victory was choosing each other, every single day, and building something that no conspiracy could ever touch. So one more time, if this story touched you, if it made you think or feel or believe that good can triumph over evil and family can be found in the most unexpected places, show it some love. Like, subscribe, share, comment. Let's spread this message that different is beautiful, that brilliant children like Isaiah deserve to be celebrated, that single mothers like Amara are heroes, and that families come in all forms but love is universal. This has been the story of how a 5-year-old hacker saved his family and changed the world. But really, it's been the story of all of us, trying to find where we belong, fighting for the people we love, and refusing to let the villains of the world write our endings. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, somewhere out there, there's a 5-year-old genius working on something that's going to change everything. Maybe it's worth paying attention to what the smallest voices are saying. They might just be the ones who save us all.